Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and welcome to part 1 of our exploration of Asian horror films released in 2016. If you're a newer subscriber and you're unfamiliar with this playlist of videos, I basically do a mini review of every single Asian horror film that I have seen. There are 79 videos that precede this one, and they cover a grand total of 749 Asian horror movies. And I'll include a link to this playlist in the description box below. So I suggest that you check out a few, if not most, of my prior videos in this playlist, because you'll get a bunch of recommendations for Asian horror movies, as well as some warnings on the ones that you should ignore. And there's also a pretty healthy sample size of titles that I cover. It'll give you a good feel for what kinds of movies have been made available to international audiences historically from these countries. So even if you don't want to watch a lot of them, if you just watch the videos, you'll get a good idea of what these industries are all about. Because there are a lot of misconceptions regarding Asian horror, and this playlist is intended to rectify some of those. So there really are no excuses anymore for being unable to find entertaining Asian horror films for anyone who's familiar with this playlist. More than enough coverage to find some titles that you might enjoy. Now, our next year here is the study of 2016. So I'm going to review 33 Asian horror films from this particular year over the course of 4 videos. And if you've seen my prior reviews, you might remember that 2013 was particularly outstanding for Asian horror. I actually made another video a few years ago where I actually compared Asian horror from 2013 to 2003, just a nice decade break there. And my conclusion in that video is that 2013 was a far superior year, despite the fact that 2003 was within the publicly perceived heyday of Asian horror. So I will link that video in the description box as well. Subsequently, the movies released in 2014 and 2015 continued that momentum, I should say. Now, 2016, in my opinion, was more of a top-heavy year, meaning that the best films of 2016 represent some of the best Asian horror films of all time. But the overall pool of films was slightly weaker compared to the years that came before it. Still, there's some good stuff that came out this year. So let's knock out the honorable mentions first. And remember, these are movies that some people might classify as horror films, but I do not. Rage came out in 2016. That's a Japanese kind of dramatic thriller. I have a review on my channel. Fantastic movie. I would say it's a must-watch, but I classify it as, again, a dramatic thriller, not a horror film. Shin is another one that came out in 2016. I enjoyed it. Check out my review. Not a horror film, in my opinion. And finally, we have Insane, the Korean film that was moderately entertaining, but more of a thriller. One final note before we get started here is that I never got to see one of my most highly anticipated Japanese movies from 2016, The Eye's Dream, from Hisayasu Sato. Now, it's apparently a dark art house thriller that had some horrific elements within it. So I'm very frustrated that it never got a release anywhere, even without subtitles. But I did see a different Hisayasu Sato film from 2016, and it's a doozy, I think. So I look forward to giving my thoughts on that film, which will be unnamed right now. So that's just a qualification. It's one of the reasons why I waited a little bit longer to cover 2016 in Asian horror, but I never got to watch the film, so I'm just going to go along with it. So let's get to the meat of the video. And as usual, part 1 of these videos, it's the rough one. So I begin with the worst Asian horror films from the year, and I gradually work my way up to the best Asian horror films of the year over the 4 parts of the video. So yeah, this one is going to be filled to the brim with dumpster juice. Yeah, so get ready. And remember, all the titles I discuss will be listed in the description box below. So when thinking of the worst Asian horror film of 2016, I gotta say, the choice was fairly easy, and that is Dokumushi, Toxic Insects. It's from Japan. 7 strangers are locked up in a building with nothing to eat. They see a big stock pot, a butcher's knife, and a timer that counts down from 7 days. The strangers must kill each other until there is only one person left, but if they take too long, they will go insane due to hunger and stress. There are cameras everywhere to watch them, but who could possibly be behind such an evil game? Now, I'm going to say it right now. This premise has been done to death at this point. Even Japan itself has produced a whole bunch of films about a bunch of people in one location. They have to fight to the death. If you're going to do it, you got to give me some energy and creativity. Dokumushi does neither of those things. It's slow-paced, but also lacking in anything interesting, anything fun, or anything memorable. The movie, in my opinion, is kind of unacceptable, really. It's obvious that the filmmakers put little to no effort into it. Kind of ridiculous how much of the runtime is spent with characters sitting around, doing nothing. They walk around, look at some stuff, they check the doors, they check the faucets, they walk up the stairs, they walk down the stairs, and they occasionally make out with each other in the bathroom. So there's no sense of urgency at all to this film. The psychological aspects of the premise are not developed really in interesting ways. There is a pretty stupid twist at the end of the film involving one of the girls, and there's another twist at the very end that you won't see coming, but that's probably because it was pretty dumb and extremely contrived. The main reason I actually watched this film is because Rina Takeda is in it, and she was in movies like Dead Sushi, Karate Girl, High Kick Girl. I like her a lot. She's talented, but she's had her fair share of underwhelming roles in movies, and this is another one. She's really the only actor in this who does a decent job, and everyone else basically stinks. The acting talent is just not good. It almost feels like Rina is degrading herself by being in a movie like this. She definitely deserves more. The school environment, kind of boring. Nothing in terms of atmosphere. Lighting is flat and poorly staged. Production values are utter crap. I mean, how much money did you spend on this? I mean, at least give me some good lighting if you're going to keep it into a limited series of locations. Death scenes range between lame and pretty good. There are a few corpse shots and brief moments that are like a little bit gory, a little bit. There was a good throat slit at the very end of the film, but this is still a problem because most of the death scenes are pretty lame, and there's so little else to enjoy in the film. At least give me some cool kills while you're at it, right? Doesn't even do that. So Dokumushi is a compilation of most of the bad things that you'll find in this subgenre of horror. I would say avoid this one like the plague, I would say. It's available on Region 3 DVD with subtitles if you really want to sit through it. I don't recommend this. There's some bad movies you might want to watch out of curiosity. This is not one of them. Alright, next. Now, I'm going to cover a few movies tonight that I blind bought while in Japan. And I actually, if you've been following my Asian movie collection playlist for, ever since the beginning of my channel, you will have seen these already, the DVDs, but now I get to review them. Now this one is, they're obscure, no one's ever heard of them. I mean, these are direct-to-video bargain basement films that you get at Book Off in Japan, okay? So I'll mow through this one pretty quick. I don't even know the American title. You ready for this? Shinrei Toko Shinshu Noroi no Doga Densetsu. It's a horror anthology from Japan, of course. So this is one of those, like I said, blind buy DVDs from one of my trips to Japan. It's an anthology of over a dozen documentary-style horror short films with a total runtime of 83 minutes. The format is typically in the form of handheld camera work, with people doing everyday things, but then they capture ghostly imagery in the background. This is kind of like a compilation of these fake videos. And we also get pixelated faces to hide their identities for added, impact. Now, I'm not going to go into discussing all of the segments in this one in particular. Not really worth it because it's so bad. But I'll give you an example of what you get in this. Okay, the first segment shows someone playing with a soccer ball for like 4 or 5 minutes. So someone will put a camera down, they'll blurt out a person's face, and they'll just be kicking a soccer ball for like 5 minutes. Okay. And then maybe you'll see like a split-second shot of a woman standing in the distance, like a ghost girl. And then it's there for like a second or two, and then it disappears. And that's it. Move on to the next segment. In another segment, two random dudes are talking under an overpass for minutes on end. Just, put a camera down on a tripod. All right, let's talk. Just talk random stuff for a few minutes. And then a ghost girl peeks out from behind a pillar. That's it. Move on to the next segment. So it's pretty dicey. Pretty dicey. Now, this type of scare can work. I actually really enjoy background scares in horror films. But the execution counts, man. Like the Yami Doga films, Tokyo Videos of Horror, I think is the English title. Those are a pretty good example. I've reviewed all of those that I've seen. But in a film like this, there's no story, no established tension. It comes off as really lazy. They just film two people doing random stuff for 5 minutes and then chuck in usually a CGI shot. They don't even get a real person to stand there as the ghost. So there's no craftsmanship whatsoever. Get some low-grade CGI ghost effects. Some of them look very fake. Very gimmicky. It feels like a gimmick. There's one segment that it's a camera on an overpass of a highway. And you see cars driving by for 5 minutes. There's cars driving by. And then the money shot is a car drives by and a CGI ghost is hanging out of the window like this. Like they're partying like it's 1999. And it's not meant to be funny. It's meant to be scary, so it's bad. So yeah, this is a pretty bad film. It's almost like you're playing Where's Waldo. It's not really a horror film. That's what it feels like when I'm watching it. So yeah, it's just, you've never heard of it before, don't bother seeking it out. It is available on Region 2 DVD without subs. Alright, next film is technically a Cambodian production, but it was shot in Mongolia, and the dialogue, the spoken language, is Mongolian. Interesting production history, and that is The Demon. Again, we're, of course, in 2016. It's a Cambodian horror. I'm calling it Cambodian-Mongolian hybrid here. The film opens with a lengthy scene involving an old man who is taking care of his bedridden wife. This frustrates him, and she eventually passes away. The man sees a demon afterward, and he consults a spiritual advisor who tells him to leave the house and never sell it, because whoever else comes into this they're gonna die. Now, time passes. A group of friends go into this now abandoned house to hold a wild New Year's Eve bash, which gets unexpectedly bloody as they realize that the house they've chosen as their party venue is haunted by the demon. So this is only 71 minutes long, but it moves very slowly. Takes forever to get going. It's dull as dirt, is how I would describe this. Kind of painful to sit through. You basically get characters walking around a house. They drink some alcohol. There's a little hanky-panky, and that's what you get leading up to the scares. The story, it's really kind of finished within the opening 10 minutes, and it goes nowhere after that. I mean, it's almost like they're setting something up at the beginning. It's cliche, but they're setting something up, and you're like, okay, what are we going to learn about this? Is anything interesting? Are there going to be some plot developments? Not really. It's not, there's no engaging mystery to it, and it's, there's really nothing to keep you engaged with the film. The scares finally hit mostly during the second half. They're backloaded. Low grade, ineffective. The face of the ghost is a little bit creepy. I do like the facial kind of structuring or design of the ghost, but the way the scares are directed and constructed are kind of incompetent. Everything's kind of short-lived. This includes some cheap jump scares, which I'm not a fan of. One scene is ripped off directly from The Exorcist, and you'll know it when it happens. I was like, wow, guys, like, really? Music is clunky, not very good. Locations are extremely limited. Lighting is drab and sleep-inducing. On the positive side, I will say that the performances are actually generally pretty good in this, but overall the film is pretty much a failure in terms of entertainment value. Now, The Demon is available on Asian Crush with subtitles, so, I still don't think it's worth even checking it out from a curiosity standpoint. Really, almost none of the films tonight are really worth even exploring at all. Sometimes I'll say, oh, I didn't like it, but you might like it if you like this or something, but that's not really the case tonight. Our next film is from mainland China, and that is The Precipice Game. Liu Chenchen, a free-spirited young woman, rebels against her wealthy family and elopes with her boyfriend to join a cruise-bound treasure hunt. But what began as an innocent game with promises of great reward soon turns into a battle for survival, when the contestants are thrown into a mysterious world of intrigue and chaos in the middle of the sea. Liu relies on her wits and her new friends to survive, all the while unmasking foes and learning that nothing is what it seems. But as her companions are attacked one by one, she must do everything she can to escape. So there's an early twist. Kind of contrived and not very smart. It attempts to use fake gun bullets to kind of like smart effect, and it doesn't really do it well. But there are a number of unconvincing explanations that are put forward in this film. I'm all for suspension of disbelief if the movie's fun, but some of the explanations in this are completely implausible. I mean, there are times you'll be sitting there listening to this nonsense that they're trying to sell to you, and all you could do is kind of shake your head and be like, no, I'm sorry. The movie is kind of stupid. And yes, that does include the huge twist at the end. This movie has a twist at the end. I don't know how it could be satisfying to anyone. So, yeah, that's a big strike. Outside of the poor script writing, the general filmmaking quality, it ranges between decent and below average. Action and direction are kind of just mediocre. I did enjoy some of the music. At times it was atmospheric. The sets are fine. The production values are definitely better than the films we've covered so far. I'll tell you that much. But we're still kind of restricted to a handful of rooms in this for the most part. Conflict feels surprisingly lethargic. For much of the runtime, we're subjected to wafer-thin characters who sit around and talk, which seems to be a theme for this evening's movies that we're covering. Or they'll walk around the cruise ship, exploring and kind of just avoiding dangers. The premise is not nearly as entertaining as it sounds. You're on it's basically survival horror on a cruise ship, which should be pretty cool, but it really isn't. Every once in a while you get a decent scene, something that's decent. You're like, oh, maybe they're getting better here, and then it just kind of flatlines again. None of the traps are really that impressive or memorable in this film. And they're not really set up well, so it's easy to become disengaged with the film. Yeah, so this one's not good. I mean, it's definitely better than the stuff we've covered so far, but it's not good. This was a Cineflix rental for me, but that rental service no longer exists. I can't seem to find it on DVD at all. And I thought at one point it was on Netflix as well, but it's not on there anymore. So it's kind of difficult to find nowadays. You're not missing anything. Alright, we get another blind buy from Japan, another obscure one, but it gives you an idea of the type of stuff they release direct-to-video over there. Alright, now this one is another one I got from Book Off in the 500 yen bin. And that is called Saikyojyureiko, a horror anthology again. So this is an anthology of 13 documentary-style horror shorts with a total runtime of 60 minutes. This has a similar presentation to many films of this kind. You get slow-motion replays of ghostly images that are accidentally captured. One annoying aspect is that the pixelation is used to protect the identities and locations of the people involved, which is obviously a gimmick because these are all fake videos. But I know they're attempting realism, but it gets annoying because half the screen is filled with pixels sometimes. You can't see anything. Big distraction. Constant voice distortion is irritating. In terms of scare tactics, the filmmakers did not put much effort or thought into this. Not ambitious, not creative, not creepy. But I'd say it's still a little bit better than the last blind buy that we covered tonight. So at least there's that much. So for the sake of information, I'll briefly discuss each short film. Just to give you an idea here. There's 13 here, so let's rip through them. You get two people who explore the inside of an abandoned hotel. Decent. It's a decent segment. A guy rides his bike and records something strange at a train crossing. Really, really lame. A romantic couple explore a cabin in a forest, which has a pond. Another decent segment. A guy films a video in his own home and catches something weird. Slightly creepy. A few people have dinner at home and catch something weird on camera. Slightly creepy. So, first 5 segments here, it's like, I mean, there's a chance if this picks up its game, it could be a decent anthology. But no, it tanks. The 6th story. A few guys hang out in a playground at night but investigate a banging noise. Very lame segment. A woman records something strange in her kitchen. Very mediocre. A kid practices skateboarding. And I'm just going to tell you what happens, okay? Because nobody's going to watch this. For 5 minutes, a kid is practicing skateboarding back and forth in front of a motionless camera. And then the last shot is a skateboarder riding by, and a CGI ghost hand comes out and grabs the skateboard to trip them. And they don't really notice that it was a ghost. They just fall over flat on their face. You know, they pick up the skateboard and start skateboarding again. Like, that's the segment. It's so worthless. It's so pathetic. Some guys walk through a tunnel at night. It's a decent one. And then he gets 3 lame ones in a row. A guy explores an abandoned restaurant. Some girls go to a stream. And another one is at a karaoke bar, a karaoke bar. And then the final segment is a haunted bathroom at night, which is just kind of decent again. So, yeah, the best you're going to get in this anthology is decent and a lot of lameness. So, don't worry about never finding this. You know, if you really search for it, maybe Region 2 DVD without subs you'll be able to find, but it's not worth it, people. All right, let's go to Thailand. Let's mix it up. This is one that I just rewatched the other week. This is called Bangkok 13 from Thailand. Pia is a girl with a 6th sense. Her ability to see ghosts leads her to become the key to unlocking 13 haunted secrets in Bangkok. Now, she joins a paranormal TV show in hopes of finding out the truth behind her strange gift. The decision leads her to a dark, I guess, a series of locations, but are all connected in some ways. So, unfortunately, the crew that she's with has a history of disrespecting local spirits, which could prove to be a major problem with their current assignment. So when I saw the title for this film, I had assumed that it would be an anthology of 13 short stories, but that's not the case at all. Okay, it's basically just a main set of characters going to each, location with a linear story there. Movie isn't bad. I don't think this is a terrible film or anything. It's simply forgettable. There's a lot of talking in this one, and a lot of talking. The acting is decent, but there's not enough oomph to this, not enough color to it. Scare tactics, run of the mill. The scenes jump around quite a bit. They fail to create a sense of impending doom to make up for the lack of the money shots. There's really no money shots that are memorable in this for the ghosts or the spirits. Sometimes it doesn't even show what happens to the characters. It's just like, okay, let's just keep moving. You know what I mean? It's not good. When the horror images are actually shown, there are no interesting apparitions, just real basic ghost stuff. There are some cheap scares, not much variety in terms of setting. Almost every location they visit is like an abandoned building, so it gets kind of repetitive. Kind of hard to talk about the story because there really isn't one in this. You would think you have this whole film and you go location to location, maybe you'll build something with it. But it doesn't really do a good job of that. There might be a little bit of that in there, but not enough. There's actually a different Thai ghost film that I've covered, years ago, called The Victim from 2006. Far better film than this. So I would say go watch The Victim instead of Bangkok 13. Okay? You can skip this one. It is available, get this, it's available on Facebook, on a streaming Facebook page. So, And we go to our final Japanese blind buy of the evening. Yeah, didn't do the best when I was picking out of the 500 yen bin. But this one looked like it could be fun. And that is Easter Nightmare. The film begins with a man who gets murdered by what looks like a mutant bunny rabbit humanoid monster hybrid. Oh yes, yes, you've heard that right. However, it's kind of hard to tell early on because you only see the back of the monster's head. But after that, we meet our main protagonist, a young girl who dances terribly in the middle of a park. Her and her friends are eventually stalked and targeted for murder by the mutant bunny man. The premise it's got some potential, all right? And a while back, I reviewed Halloween Nightmare, the first of which I thought was decent, and the Halloween Nightmare 2 sucked. So I was thinking, hey, when I saw this Easter Nightmare, maybe Easter Nightmare would be like an improvement on the first Halloween Nightmare film. But no, it isn't. It's actually based on a video game called The Rabbit House. And I actually looked up some footage of this video game just for context, and it looked terrible. It looked like a pretty terrible game. Kind of weird that they would base a movie off of such a low-grade game. But here we are. It's only 63 minutes long, which exposes the laziness of the scriptwriter in particular. Because pacing should never be this bad for a film this short. You know, it's still too much filler to sit through, frequently involving scenes of characters who talk, surprise, surprise, dance very poorly, and conflict with creepy guys at the dance studio. Like, you have a mutant killer bunny man, and you throw in this extra conflict with these creeps at a dance studio. Like, why do you need them? Focus on the killer bunny. Focus on the killer bunny. That's what you have. It's your gold for the film. You have to use it. Acting is not good. The first 3 deaths, pretty lame. They only show the back of the bunny man's head, which is pretty frustrating. Midway through the film, I'm like, am I ever going to see this freaking guy, this face? But the subsequent deaths are a bit better. They are. A bit repetitive, mostly with bloodless, like, bunny neck bites. You see, like, the teeth, and they bite the neck and rip the necks up. Pretty good deaths, but a little repetitive. But the face of the bunny, when they finally show him, it's actually pretty good. It's not bad, but they should have showed him more often. The twist ending is actually kind of neat, I thought. I thought it was alright. It was a pretty good twist. There is some decent atmosphere at times. For a low-budget film, it was shot okay. There's some effective use of ambient sound, probably the best aspect of the film. Early on, it seems like, ooh, this movie could be really kind of creepy. And they don't lay on the atmosphere enough to really drive it home. But it's there in spots. But overall, not seeking out. I know it sounds tempting to watch a movie with a mutant killer bunny man, but I would skip this one. Region 2 DVD with no subs. That's the best you're going to get for this. Our final film of the evening is very lighthearted. In fact, some people might not even classify it as a horror film. But I was thinking about it, and because the title and the plot synopsis certainly portray the film as horror, and some people are going to watch this based on the title alone, and maybe even the plot synopsis, and it does have some horror elements in it. I think it's worth exploring here. And that is Haunted Campus, a Japanese horror romantic comedy hybrid. Oh yes. Set at a university where a series of bizarre and unexplained phenomena are occurring, the movie is essentially the plot of the popular Haunted Campus novel put onto film. All right. Members of the Occult Research Club spring into action as they investigate the hauntings, disturbances, and incidents that are associated with the school. It sounds like a horror movie plot, but if I were to rewrite this plot to be more accurate, I would say this. A nice guy can see ghosts, and he has a crush on a cute girl who attended his high school and now goes to the same college, and they just happen to be in an occult research club. But romance is in the air. So yeah, to be honest, I mean, this does, especially during the middle section, plays out like a romantic comedy with some horror elements in it. That will be enough to turn off most fans of horror films. So, you know, if you want to skip it just based on that information alone, I understand. But South Korea did successfully blend these two genres a few times in the past. There was a film called Spellbound from 2011, and a film called My Scary Girl from 2006, which had some horror elements in there with the romantic comedy, and both of those were good movies. So there was a chance that this could be good, but it doesn't really hit the home run here. The romantic elements, in particular, kind of like flimsy puppy dog stuff. You know, if I am a fan of romantic comedy films. Some fans of rom-coms might find some things to enjoy here. There are a few funny scenes here and there, so the comedy does work at times. Performances are okay. Great romantic comedies, in my opinion, tend to have extremely strong female leads. The female lead in this film is just pretty good. You know what I mean? Not really memorable. As it turns out, of course, our protagonist attracts ghostly attacks, which is where the horror element comes in. One case involves a little doll that was the property of a girl who committed murder and then suicide. And the ultimate conclusion of this subplot turns out being pretty melodramatic and doesn't really attempt to be scary. Another case involves a suicide on campus that was excluded from media coverage due to the influence of university administrators. It's another mostly non-impactful story that ends in ways that have been seen many times before. The scare tactics are stronger, but they are also pretty basic and not that memorable. This film, I would say, I don't think it's terrible or anything. It's kind of like Bangkok 13 or whatever we covered. It's not awful. It's not like the worst thing ever, but it's not good enough to be... It's too flimsy to be recommendable. People who want to see a legitimate horror film should probably skip this one. It's available on YouTube with subtitles. So yeah, it was a pretty unimpressive list of titles we covered this evening, as is usual for part one of these videos. But we cleared out most of the trash in this video. I think there's just 2 other films in the next one that are kind of mediocre, and then we get into the pretty good stuff after that. So be sure to join me for part 2, which will be probably uploaded in another 3 to 4 weeks or so, because we will crack into a batch of films that are more watchable than the ones we covered this evening. And remember to watch some of the older videos in this playlist when you get a chance. And as always, we will see you next time.